Now it's time to install and align the top. We got all the work done below the table, so let's get that done. The top's held in place with 4 bolts, one on each corner that connects the cabinet to the top. So let's go ahead and put those in. You just want to get them in place so that you can still move the top around because we have to align it, and we'll get to that in just a second. So now let's align the top with the blade. We've installed a blade, and I'm going to align it to make sure that the slot miter gauge is the same distance on both ends of the table, the outfeed and the infeed. So to do that, I've attached a known straight edge and have just attached a couple of spring clamps to hold it in place. Then I'm going to use a combination square using this edge in the slot gauge and measure the distance to the straight edge. So I can just ease that up there till it touches. Now we're going to test this at the back edge of the saw as well. And as you can see, an adjustment's in order. Now I want to use a dead blow hammer to move the table very slightly till we come into alignment. Now let's go back and check the other side. Well, it looks pretty good, but I think we need just another slight adjustment. So using this method with the combination square, I think we've got our setup in the ballpark, but I'm next going to go to a dial indicator and prove out that we are absolutely square before we tighten the top down. So I have my dial indicator set up, and it'll allow me to measure this position and then slide along with the tooth to this position. You want to measure the same tooth just in case there's any blade deflection. So the first thing we want to do is zero it out. So now my needle's on 0. Now I want to slide the dial indicator while keeping track of the blade I was on, the tooth I was on, to this edge, and then check our reading. So it looks like we're off about 7 thousandths. Now in order to fix that, I want to tap the table half of that distance. That looks good. Now let's go back and check this side again. So I think we have it where we want it. Now I want to lock the bolts down and we'll check it again. Okay, let's put the wings on now. By the way, here's a good tip. If you're alone in the shop, clamp a board to the front edge. That'll allow you to rest one end on while you get the bolts started. So you know when you're attaching the wings, you really have to make sure that the 2 level surfaces are flush. That's your first adjustment. So now that we have the wings back on, we're going to run through that same check with the straight edge to see how level and flat the top is. We're going to go corner to corner, and I'm going to use this light to shine under the edge. That looks pretty good to me. Let's check the other way. Well, you know, there are a couple of places that aren't quite perfect, but I think it's right in the center here where there's been a lot of wear over the last 60 years. I don't think there's a whole lot we can do about that right now. I'll work on it a little bit more, but we're good to go for now. Okay, so now it's time to put the guide rails on for the fence. Really, it's a pretty simple process. In the front and the back, there are just 2 bolts with these special spacers that fit between the rail and the tabletop. So then you can just tighten them up with a screwdriver. Attaching the front rails are just a bit different because rather than threading the bolt into the top, there's a nut behind the front top edge. So with the rails in place, I've slipped the fence on. Of course, you want to check to see if it's parallel, and the best way to do that with this kind of fence is just slide it up to the miter slot gauge, lock it down, and check the alignment with the miter slot edge and the edge of the fence. And I would say someone had this one tuned up mighty fine before we took it apart, because it's just great now, no problem. And guess what? This is my insert from my UNISAW, which is about 8 years old. You know what? Still a good fit 60 years later. Well, that about wraps it up for today. And this is great. We've got an operational saw that's good to go. Next time I have a couple of things more to do. I want to add some wooden faces to this fence, and I have to build a motor cover to improve our dust collection. But other than that, we're ready to start cutting wood.